At this time, we are going to pause one moment and prepare for our third session. And we're back for our third session. Sorry about that. A tiered intervention to support all students. Presenting tiered intervention to support all students is Marilyn Neese, Phillips Roberts, and Lauren Bresky. Marilyn Neese, Phillips Roberts, is committed to being an advocate for both students and teachers. A proud product of Dallas ISD, she served as an educator for nearly 20 years in a variety of district roles, including teacher, district-wide campus instructional coach, and academic facilitator. Currently, she serves as a coordinator for the Multi-Tiered Systems of Support Department. Presenting alongside her is Lauren Bresky. Lauren is the project coordinator for the Multi-Tiered Systems of Support. She has been in Dallas ISD for 4 years. This will be her 10th year in education. Ladies, if you are ready, I will turn it over to you at this time.
Good afternoon and good evening, everyone. I think we need some assistance with Lauren's camera and mic, but we'll go ahead and get started. On behalf of Dallas ISD, the MTSS team, we are so excited to have you parents join with us this evening to learn more about the multi-tiered systems of support and tiered instruction. So thank you so much for that introduction of my colleague Lauren and myself. We are the coordinators for the Multi-Tiered Systems of Support Department, and we support the entire district K-12. So a few topics that we would like to cover with you this afternoon or evening. We're going to discuss and define the MTSS framework, talk about tiered instruction and intervention, and show you where you may be able to find some parent resources coming soon. And of course, you will have an opportunity to ask us some questions and receive some answers. Next. In Dallas ISD, we believe that all educators want students to learn, all parents want students to learn, and all students want to learn. We know that when parents, community, school personnel work hand in hand together, there's a shared responsibility to ensure student academic performance. So let's take a look at this video, which will define MTSS and give you a bit of information of the MTSS Overview framework.
Hello, this video was designed to help you understand MTSS and why it is important for all students. So, what is MTSS? Multi-Tiered Systems of Support, or MTSS, is a comprehensive preventative framework that encompasses structures, resources, and procedures in the areas of academics, language, and engagement to support student achievement. The MTSS process, at its core, is about all stakeholders: students, teachers, parents, and the community, working together to ensure that all students are engaged in a learning environment where they feel valued and supported to achieve success. This framework consists of 4 essential components, including screening, the multi-level prevention system, progress monitoring, and data-based decision-making. MTSS also encompasses features such as culturally responsive instruction, family engagement, and evidence-based practices. As you'll see in the graphic, each of the components and features contribute to improved student outcomes. Screening. Screening is a system of identifying students at risk for poor learning outcomes. NWEA Map Growth is the identified universal screener for reading and mathematics in Dallas ISD. Progress monitoring. Progress monitoring is a system for monitoring the effectiveness of the supports and intervention provided to students, and is documented in the PowerSchool MTSS Interventions module for students receiving intervention. The School-Wide Multi-Level Prevention System. The School-Wide Multi-Level Prevention System is made up of 3 increasingly intense levels of instructional support. All students will be introduced to Tier 1 instruction and curriculum. Some students will receive Tier 2 supplemental intervention, and a few students will receive supplemental intensive Tier 3 intervention. Data-based decision-making. Data-based decision-making determines who needs assistance, what type of instruction or assistance is needed, and whether the duration and intensity are sufficient. In the center ring, you'll notice the phrase culturally responsive, meaning that the screening tools, progress monitoring tools, core instruction, intervention, and data-based decision-making procedures should all be culturally responsive. In the same ring, you'll notice the phrase evidence-based, which reinforces that all components are supported by evidence and research. In Dallas ISD, the Multi-Tiered Systems of Support Department believes that all educators want students to learn. All parents want students to learn. All students want to learn. For more information on MTSS, please visit www.dallasisd.org/MTSS and follow us on Twitter at DallasISDMTSS.
So when we think about all of those systems supporting the MTS framework, your role is key to making this happen. Our department is focused on providing those supports to campuses to ensure students are successful.
All right, good afternoon. I'm going to speak to you a little bit about tiered instruction. So the children will all receive grade level curriculum and lessons, which is tier 1 instruction. In addition to that, there may be some students who are identified as needing additional targeted intervention in addition to tier 1 instruction. So they'll get that grade level curriculum and lessons and as well receive supplemental intervention. There's also tier 3 intervention as well, and that is intensive intervention, happens more often than tier 2. It usually happens in very small groups, if not one-on-one, and that's provided to very few students. So keep in mind, all students receive tier 1 instruction. Some students will receive tier 2 in addition to that quality tier 1 instruction, and then others may receive tier 3 intensive intervention in addition to tier 1 instruction. Next. So we're going to talk a little bit about what are interventions. Those are what is happening with tier 2 and tier 3 instruction, and we need to talk about who and why might a student need some intervention.
What are interventions and why do students need them? Learning occurs at a different pace for some students and in different ways for others. When students aren't making adequate progress academically, linguistically, or they're demonstrating difficulty engaging in the classroom with high-quality Tier 1 instruction, they can receive additional individualized support, Tier 2 and 3 intervention, to provide them with opportunities to improve their performance. In Dallas ISD, we use data from several sources to determine the students who may be in need of evidence-based Tier 2 or Tier 3 intervention. Some examples of data sources include students' grades, attendance, and discipline reports, and a universal screener assessment, NWEA map growth. After the need has been identified, a team of people, i.e. teachers, counselors, administrators, etc., undergo a root cause analysis to determine exactly what supports each student may need. From there, teachers work to create and implement a Tier 2 or Tier 3 intervention plan that includes customized instruction specific to the student's needs, in addition to Tier 1 grade level instruction. Students' progress will be monitored and reviewed to determine growth and next steps. Effective implementation of evidence-based interventions and progress monitoring of these interventions strengthens the student's identified growth area and positively impacts their long-term success. For more information on MTSS intervention support, please visit www.dallasisd.org/MTSS.
Wonderful. Next slide. Perfect. So now that you've heard us mention our website twice, you're probably thinking, well, what's the website? So in our website, there will be a plethora of resources, but as caregivers and parents and guardians, I want you to know that we are working hard to make sure you are also supported in this. So there is a tab titled Parents. on the top of the toolbar. I do want to point out, if you're using a smaller screen, you may have the word more on the top right corner. Click that and you'll be able to find the rest of the tabs on the screen, including the Parents tab. And in there, we'll provide you with some connections and resources to better support your children at home. Wonderful. So I guess without anything else, we are here for questions. We're here to answer and support you in the ways in which you need.
It is now time for our Q&A session. I have gathered the top questions asked in our Q&A feed, and I will give our presenters the opportunity to answer those at this time. Ladies, are you ready?
Absolutely.
Okay. How do high school students receive Tier 3 services?
So that's a great question. It can look different in each class. It may be provided by the content area teacher. Teachers work to schedule the minutes in which they serve the students, and that may include a specific amount of time blocked off for stations, for small group work, within their period to best support those students who are in need of Tier 2 or Tier 3 intervention.
Okay. What type of support systems do you have in place for Tier 1 students?
So when we think about supports for Tier 1 students, remember going back to that chart that Lauren shared with you, Tier 1 is that grade level instruction. So you may see, although you can have a small group instruction in a Tier 1 setting, so that could be some supports. It could be differentiating how the student may learn and receive the support based on their learning style to ensure that that student is successful. It just varies depending upon the need, but it would happen in that core Tier 1 time frame.
Okay. And what if the supports for Tier 3 do not work? What is the parents' options after that point?
Excellent. Great question. So the parents should be involved in the process or know about what's happening with their child as soon as they are receiving intervention. So not to be confused with special education, intervention can be provided to any student who is in need and is demonstrating, and the data is demonstrating that we need to do so. So if a student has been receiving intervention and it's still not working, those data-based, campus-based data teams will come back together, including the parent, and have a meeting to discuss about possible next steps, or do we need to adjust the plan we have in place so that it better suits the needs of your student or your child.
How will supports be made for students learning virtually?
That's a very good question. Being that we have gone digital and we are in virtual settings, we are the same supports that a student may be receiving in the classroom. There are opportunities for a teacher to support that student virtually as well. Through, if it's a Zoom session, that small group can still happen. And teacher, if, for example, if it's a math support, teacher may be giving specific virtual manipulatives for that students to use to have a better understanding of the concepts that are being taught to them. But we are also, with the parent resources that Lauren mentioned will be on our website, we've updated some of the interventions that are available to teachers to use based on the need of the first 6 weeks. There are interventions that have been identified, specific gaps that students may struggle with at the beginning of the school year. So those teachers will have access to those interventions to support students when school begins.
Additionally, teachers will get creative with some of the virtual learning. There are tools such as a breakout room within Zoom where you can poll small groups of students. So interventions may take place by grouping some students who have like needs in common, and a teacher may facilitate small groups virtually to be able to deliver that intervention targeted to the needs of each child.
What type of evaluation is used to tier students?
That's a very good question as well. You may have noticed in the video, we talked about screening being an essential component of the MTSS framework. And so the NWEA screener is a tool that we use to determine students who may be at risk for academic performance. So based on that data provided in that universal screener, it gives our teachers a good indicator of the type of supports and where to begin supporting the students with the gaps that they may have.
How will screening be conducted this year for students learning virtually?
So NWEA is NWEA MAP Growth, our universal screener. We are very familiar with having to do this virtually. And there was a summer program that we laid out the foundation for virtual testing, if you will. So we were able to work that out and make sure we had a plan in place if things needed a different alternative. We're also working right now to clarify and refine those plans for the upcoming beginning of year screening window. Additionally, NWEA has had school districts all across the country successfully virtually test their students, even as early as spring. So when the pandemic hit and there were some campuses and some districts who were ready to go out there and do it and came up with a plan basically overnight to do that, and they were successful in doing so. So that information shared with us from NWEA, we're partnering with them to make sure we are providing the most ideal and best possible screening environment for all the students, whether they are remotely taking it or they're taking it in person in a classroom.
Okay. How will parents be informed of what tier their child is on? And when does that usually take place?
So after the universal screener, that will be first time students participate in the screening window this September. Parents should share their students' performance or their child's performance, and then that way they will know exactly where how their student is performing. You know, if they are on track to being successful, if they have some learning gaps that should be addressed and supported. Parents should share that information at the completion of the universal screening window.
Additionally, if a student is in need of Tier 2 intervention or Tier 3 intervention outside of just academics, there are several different measures that we use, data sources, and there should be a fluid communication between the campus, the teacher, and the parent or the caregiver. So if a student is receiving Tier 2 intervention, the policy and procedure is that the campus will notify the parent or caregiver that the child is in need of specific intervention in that particular area. Very clearly laid out in a letter, usually sometimes a conversation on the phone or a meeting in person, but we're a community. We have to work together hand in hand. And so that should be something that should be communicated as soon as Tier 2 intervention is identified as a need.
How much intervention time should a Tier 3 students receive each day?
So that's going to vary. We typically say a minimum of 20 to 30 minutes, 3 to 5 times a week. So there's a window. There's not an absolute, you have to do this amount of time every single day, but there is a range, and we typically say 20 to 30 minutes, 3 to 5 times a week for students.
How do I communicate when I see my child needs help and I'm unsure of what tier they're on?
Do you want me to go ahead? So I would definitely say communication is key with the parent and teacher and the campus. At any point you're concerned about how your student or your child is performing, please reach out to the teacher and ask, because universal screening is for all students, grades, beginning of year screening, all grades 1 through 11. So definitely reach out. If the teacher has not reached out to you, reach out to them and say, I understand my child participated in the universal screener. Can you please share with me their performance? and just specifically ask, what are some specifics that I can do to help support my child at home if they have specific gaps in certain areas. I definitely encourage you to ask your teachers those kinds of questions, because we are here, your teachers are here, they want to see your child be successful. So definitely tap into them, because they are the advocate for your child.
What tools are used to monitor progress?
So it depends on the intervention. If they're receiving an academic intervention, the teachers have a platform where they have the intervention called out for them, how to undergo the intervention in small group or one-on-one setting, and then the tool in which they should be using to progress monitor or to check and see if it's effective. So for example, a student may receive fluency intervention, meaning when they read, are they reading at an accurate pace? Are they reading at a good volume? Are they reading the words correctly? And if they're not, maybe they're in need of some additional reading support in the area of fluency. And so that child may be monitored by something called a running record, which is small reading passages, a couple of paragraphs, depending on the level and age of the student, where they sit in a quiet place with the teacher and they read, and the teacher checks for accuracy, which words are read correctly, which words are not read correctly, and analyzes how well the child read and captures a score within 1 minute. It's kind of like a quick read. And so that may be the progress monitoring tool for a student in need of a reading intervention. Another progress monitoring tool may be a check-in, check-out sheet. If a child is in need of some additional support to help them engage effectively at school, they may be receiving, they may have some sort of check-in, check-out deal with like their favorite staff member, where they start the day off meeting with that individual a quick few minutes, and then they end the day checking out with that individual, kind of recapping how their day went. And they may have a sheet that tracks that data. And so compiling that data, we can get together as teams and decide, is this intervention working? Has this child improved in the identified area in which we're trying to help them? And if not, what do we need to do differently? And so it's very individualized, because it really depends on the intervention in which the child is receiving. But there are a plethora or a lot of research-based and evidence-based progress monitoring measures that we use.
Okay, thank you. And our final question, can you explain how MTSS works alongside like the 504, dyslexia, and students that are in special education?
Absolutely. That's a great question. So students who have a current special education plan or a current 504 plan, that does not exclude them from maybe needing some additional support in addition to what everyone in the classroom is getting. So for example, what I mean is a student may have an IEP or a special education plan for a reading disability, but they may also be in need of a little bit of support with engaging in the classroom. And if that's not covered in their IEP, their individualized education plan, then we can help figure out what we need to do to help that child engage more. So if you think of them, they can work together, but they are two separate things. So if a child has an individual education plan, that is separate, and that should be covered and maintained within that plan. But if there's an identified need outside of that, and it is not a part of that 504 or IEP plan, we can provide that, work with the campuses to have them provide a tier 2 or tier 3 intervention.
And that concludes our third session of the evening. We'd like to thank Marilyn and Lauren for sharing their time and expertise with us this evening. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you. It's going to be an awesome year.
Thank you. At this time, parents and attendees, we are going to pause for a moment and prepare for our fourth session of the evening. Connection is key, building healthy communication with your child. We will see you shortly.